everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Lounge podcast. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Nina.
Thanks for joining us here today.
And today's episode is a Halloween special.
Yes.
Just in time for the spooky season.
Yes, we obviously love Halloween, and I cannot believe it's coming up this fast.
Yeah.
Honestly. What do we have, like 8 days left or something?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Crazy.
I feel like October has just completely flown by.
It has.
Like, time is flying.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to come on here and introduce ourselves, give you a little background on kind of how we got into the spiritual, I don't know, all of the spiritual things.
Right.
And yeah, kind of share a little bit more. So.
Okay.
You want me to start? Do you want to start?
I'll start because
Perfect.
Mine kind of ties in the spooky, spooky stuff.
Yours does.
So, I was born here in Arizona, but we did move around a bit before coming back here. Mm-hmm. And one of the places I lived was a haunted house in a small town in Kansas.
Oh, it feels like, what is the movie? The Clicking 3 Times?
Oh, yeah. Wizard of Oz. That is a big thing there. There are museums.
Really?
There are, yeah.
And we have a spooky house in Kansas.
Yes. And it was like a turn of the century, very like Victorian style, like on the...
which you love.
Which I love. I do. Some things never change. And yeah, there was a lot of spiritual activity at that place.
How old were you when you lived there?
It was from like 3 to 5. So...
Oh, you were young.
I was young.
So how did you know there was spiritual activity like that young?
Okay. This is going to sound... It's out there, but there were like, you know how turn of the century, like kids had like different games they like to play and stuff. Well, one of those that was really popular back in the Victorian era were marbles.
Oh,
like
okay, that
it's
makes
like
sense.
a very old-fashioned kids thing,
game.
And there would be marbles that would roll down the hall.
Really?
Sometimes, yeah. Only on the second floor though. Yeah.
It's kind of freaky. So would you notice that at night, during the day?
It only happened a couple of times. Okay. But I remember it because I'm like, where did this come from? Like, I might have been like 4 years old at the time, but
oh my gosh.
It was different.
Were your parents around? Sure. Were they like... Oh,
they were. And my dad, funny enough, he always had like really crazy spiritual experiences. Really? Even though he was not at all. You would look at him. No, he was. He believed because he had crazy experiences. But it was weird because he was not someone you would think would be into it. Okay. But, you know, when you've had experiences, you've had experiences.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that kind of...
kick-started it all? Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And it was interesting because the house had one family living there for like over 100 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was like built by a family.
Interesting.
And then...
Like, was it almost like a farm kind of land? Like, was
it was in like the more historic area, of course, of that small town. And it was one of those... Not like a full Queen Anne style home, but a little smaller than that, but definitely in that vein of design. And there was a lot of like weird things that happened, like dramatic, but my mom fell down the stairs one time and it was really like...
It's like some American Horror Story shit.
I know, but it like wasn't...
Didn't seem like that intense.
It wasn't like... I mean, that sounds intense, falling down a flight of stairs.
True.
But it wasn't, just as somebody who does like energy clearings and home clearings, it wasn't like a demonic energy. It was just kind of mischievous, definitely like little kid energy. Yeah. And that's what I always felt that spirit was.
Little kid playing.
Yeah. And it was funny because the woman that was her childhood home, and she lived to be over 100 and lived in that house.
Oh, wow.
And I think... I never had confirmation on this, but like what I felt was like that was a sibling of hers who had passed. Because it wasn't a little girl. It was definitely a little boy. And so I feel like just having really interesting experiences from a young age.
That's interesting.
So that kind of...
It gets it all going?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting because I didn't realize like... I am a person who I don't love when ghosts are around. Like, I'm always like,
oh, not a lot of people do.
And you know, thinking back, is not what got me into my spiritual, but our sorority house in college.
Was it?
I was a ghost. I think we called him George. I don't know if he liked that name or not. And I think he had passed away like in the house. And there was like times where we'd walk into a room and it'd be really cold, but he was more friendly. Like he would like open up cabinets in the middle of the night. And I remember one time he came into my room and like shook my bed. I didn't sleep there for like a week. I was like, I'm going over to my boyfriend's. Like, I cannot do this.
Nope.
But what really got me into all of this is I was in the corporate world for years, and honestly, I was just really burned out, working a million hours, working with some amazing co-founders and really people in like the tech space that are building this out. And I loved it. I was so passionate about it. But I was so burnt out. Like it was 12, 14-hour days, consistently going, always having to do. And it was like, instead of doing a project in a normal big, Fortune 100 or 500 company, you would spend, a month working on it. It was like, do one of those every week.
Yeah.
And so it was just very taxing. Like I realized like this is a season of my life.
But not forever.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I'm so grateful for it. But I was so burnt out. And so I started looking, okay, like what are things I can do? It gave me horrible anxiety, not just that, but like I had anxiety and it just made it worse and worse. Like not getting enough sleep, not being able to like get into deep rest. And so I started exploring kind of a whole spiritual world of, what does all of this mean? And, how can I do this? And, I started with meditation. I feel like a lot of people will kind of like inch in with meditation, which I think is a great way to kind of like get into it all.
I think that's one of the biggest.
It's the gateway drug.
The gateway drug to all the other things and all the other modalities.
Yes.
It's not as intimidating as some other stuff, for sure.
I 100% agree. And as I
and
kind of
it's useful.
That, right. Like, honestly, like how good you feel after a meditation.
Yes.
I will have to say, though, at the beginning, like, I don't know if it's just me at the beginning of learning meditation.
Yeah.
Or my anxiety at the time, I could not sit still and I did not want to be in silence or like be with that for a while. Like I think there's a piece of it that nobody talks about where it's challenging to.
Well, and I feel like our nervous systems are so coded and programmed to just constantly be in like a fight or flight state that like not
being in it
is like very uncomfortable, even though it's more comfortable and much healthier for us not to be like in a very stressful state. But it's like relearning how to be.
Well, speaking of that, let's take a super quick break here, we'll kind of cut you guys over to a little mini sound bath to help you zen out for a couple of minutes here, and then we'll jump back in and chat a little bit more.
Sounds good.
Yay. See you guys in a sec. Hello and welcome to this mindful moment. We're going to take a moment to play some sound bowls and drop into our bodies. All you need to do is close your eyes. And we're going to start by taking a few deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. Envision it's Halloween. You're at home, putting on your beautiful, spooky Halloween costume. Your house is fully decorated. And you're looking around for your trick-or-treat bag to run out the door and start collecting candy. As you grab your bag, you meet up with some friends, and you run around for the next few hours, collecting as much candy as possible.
As you near the end of trick-or-treating, you run home, spill out all your candy, pick out your favorite pieces, and laugh with your friends on what a beautiful evening this was. Start to wiggle your fingers and toes, coming back into the room and blinking open your eyes. I hope you enjoyed this mindful moment, and I will see you soon.
Welcome back, everyone.
Yes, hope you enjoyed that little meditative break.
Yeah.
We were just chatting a little bit about, meditation, kind of getting into the spiritual world. And, I fell into more sound healing.
Yes.
And came into that, as you guys probably just experienced a little bit of.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also something that helps you get into that body, so that deep reset and everything. But we just wanted to chat a little bit more about some of the spooky things or spiritual things that we've seen, being a kid or other people have experienced. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we realize more people are getting into this,
Yes.
And more people have had those experiences.
Absolutely.
You want to share some?
Sure. And, when you start talking about it, it's a really positive thing, because not only does it validate your experiences, but it's also a sign to spirit that you're open to this. And it just kind of opens the gates for deeper connections.
Sorry. So we get a quick pause. We'll start that.
That was me. Oh,
you're fine.
Okay. I keep getting election shit. Okay, let's start that over. Would you mind?
Yes.
Sorry about
you're
that.
Totally fine. This is why it's easy to cut and go back.
It is. Okay.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that quick little meditative break. We were just talking a little bit about, obviously, how we got into this. I've dived more into the sound healing, which we'll chat a little bit more about later. But we thought it would be fun, because this is our little Halloween special, to talk a little bit more about the different spiritual things that have happened to us growing up, or people that we know, and kind of tell some fun stories.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I love talking about this sort of thing is the more you talk about it, the more it validates your experiences.
True.
And it's funny, because a lot of people will come into this thinking, oh, well, I didn't have spiritual experiences when I was young. Yeah. Oh, Nina, I'm not like you. I didn't grow up with all this stuff. Well, when you start talking about it, you usually realize that, wait, I did have some interesting things happen.
Yeah.
And I think you were mentioning.
Yes. Okay, so when I was younger, I used to babysit a bunch of kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And looking back, remember this family down a couple houses down the street, the sweetest people. I would put the kids to bed, and they'd be like, there's an old woman sitting in the corner.
Casual.
I'd be like, do you want to come sleep on the couch next to me? Or are you good in here? No, she's here all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Well, fast forward, my mom tells me, years later, I didn't want to tell you when you were babysitting them, but the mom was really into spiritual stuff. And in the basement, that's where she would connect with a lot of them and help people move on.
Full-on seances. Don't worry about it.
And I was like, okay, well, interesting, because yes, it felt really odd. I don't think obviously anything bad or messed up was happening. But I was like, oh my God, these children are seeing these spirits. Yeah. But I think a lot of kids do.
Kids do,
and you feel that presence around you.
Yeah. Kids are just sensitive to energy in general. They're kind of like pets.
Yeah. This is Oliver here. He is sleepy. Mm-hmm. But I feel we'll look at certain things, and I'm like, oh, is something?
What are you looking at?
Yes. Yeah. So when he gets off, if I hear something in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, if he's not doing anything weird, we're good.
Yeah, well, and that's the same with cats. Cats are so attuned to spirits. Yes. They're also very protective and little guardians.
Yeah, I always joke he's my little energy converter, because he's just, also being the dark color.
Yeah.
And all about the crystals. I love crystals, but I'm still learning what a lot of them mean. But I feel he takes all the negative energy, or if you're feeling stressed or anxious or sad,
absolutely,
he comes and gives you loving, and you feel better. And I feel a lot of pets kind of are that for people.
They really are
that energy converter and making you.
And that's kind of what all this is. Everything we talk about, even on this podcast, it's all energy. It's learning to work with your energy, learning to transmute things, to
the experiences that you have.
Yeah,
I think there's a really big piece of this too, where I'm noticing that. As we talk about this, in some ways, you're way more advanced than me with, spirits and clearings.
On certain
and
things, but other things, no.
100%. But like the random experiences we have, and we'll get into this in another podcast, but you know, I think there's a piece of this where sometimes you don't really have girlfriends you can chat about and like that validate, like, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was just telling her earlier, like, oh, I'm starting to work with someone new, and they asked me all these questions, and my answers were like, we can create whatever reality or time jump. And I'm like, this person probably thinks I'm freaking crazy. Like, I'm so glad we met in person ahead of time. Because just saying these things,
I know. I feel like we both do better, like in person connecting, because on paper it can sound weird.
Yes.
Like even talking about like the haunted house I lived in, like that sounds bizarre, but like hearing you talk about it, it's not that crazy, right?
Yes, and it's like we were talking about that even when it came to like dating. You know, like I met my husband, and I was like had crystals around my house, and my husband is very like Western medicine, and so. It was like a couple dates in, I had like thrown out my back. Like every once in a while, if I get like really stressed, my back just goes awry.
Yeah.
And he was like, we were talking about this, and I was like, yeah, like whatever. I have crystals. I'm using like, you know, essential oils, like trying to be like healthy with this. And it got to a point where I was in so much pain. And he joked, he was like, here's the basis of this. Like, if I walked in and you were in that much pain and you just have like a crystal grid around you,
that
like,
was it.
That was like the line. And I'm like, at least you know the line. Totally good with that. Like,
but I think it just goes to show too that like even like your husband's a physician.
Yeah.
So like he's not totally closed off to this, and the more he learns, and I think science is starting to back up a lot of this stuff. Like I had an interesting conversation. I manage a crystal store here in Scottsdale, Arizona.
It's amazing. Check it out.
Really cool. And one of my customers, good customer, but she is very traditional, scientist, works for like the DOD, like really interesting stuff. But she's saying how the science people have always been at odds with the spiritual people and vice versa, because they think that's like they're on opposite ends of things. They're really on the same thing. They're just using different language,
different modalities,
and they might be coming from a different place. But it all kind of leads to the same place.
Yes, and then like, don't get me wrong. Like, if I was like, oh, I broke my foot, I
wouldn't be like using crystals.
Yes, like I think there's a piece of that where with both sides of it, it
can go too extreme, and then
or like a mental health disorder, like anxiety, right? Like yes, you can take medication for it, and I'm not gonna lie, I've totally done it for a period of time. But I think there's pieces of like, how can we build our toolkits? And I think this is like something really big for me is
huge. How
do you build the toolkit that, you know, like, hey, I wake up and maybe like today I feel more anxious. What are the things I'm going to do to like help myself reset? Is it going to be like eat a lot like less sugar or less processed stuff? Do an extra meditation? Go for a walk? Like, what are those things that are in my toolkit that I'm like, oh, this is happening? Noted. And I think that's what for me got me into a lot of this too, is what are those things, and exploring those different pieces that can go into it.
Looking for alternatives too, and to go a little deeper with things too, to get to like root
cause. And I think that's maybe the thing in the spiritual thing is we try to get to the root of it, right? Of like,
and sometimes the other way is more about symptoms versus
and then there's no right or wrong. I think, you know, like we said, it depends.
Yeah, you don't need to like throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, let's not get rid of Western medicine here. It's a good thing.
It is. It's amazing.
But like, there's
and we talk about this all the time.
Path. And there's no right or wrong, and everyone's journey is different. And I think that's a big inspiration for our podcast too. Is kind of lifting the veil on it, sharing our experiences, and hopefully inspiring some of you guys too to
explore something different. You know, and it's like, you know, you can come from all different walks of life. You can come from like the corporate world. You can come from the spiritual world. You can come from being a doctor, and everybody's learning something different. And so,
it's a beautiful journey.
It's
fun.
So I'm excited to share more of that in upcoming podcasts.
Absolutely.
And just kind of jump into it all. So we're excited to have you.
Yes.
And check out our next podcast launching next week.
Bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Lounge weekly tarot reading. Today we have a fun card just in time for the spooky season. It is the Queen of Wands. Now, this is an energy that I think a lot of us are feeling post-eclipse and post-full moon. We had a really powerful one there. It's really all about stepping into your creative fire, right? Feeling passionate again about life, feeling like there's things out there that you're excited about and really looking towards the future too. So this is a card when the Queen of Wands is coming up for you. It's a card that reminds you that it's good to create some long-term plans, but really lean into how it makes you feel. The feeling, the energy is going to be the point of attraction here. And so if things are feeling really stale, if things are feeling kind of boring, if you can't get excited about it, that's probably a sign it's not in alignment. So the Queen of Wands this week is really urging you to take a look at what's lighting you up and go all in on that energy. So join us next week for another collective tarot reading, and we'll see you then.